Thank you, Elizabeth. I'm sorry. Martin Savage has been down on the ground, if you will, for this long day, and he joins us now. Martin, I hope you can hear me. I know we're having a little problem.
I can. And I wanted to pass along two things to you, Aaron. First of all, I was contacted even down here at Ground Zero by the Navy, saying that the New York area will have another visitation by a military vessel. This time it is going to be the Navy hospital ship, the U.S. Comfort. It will be passing underneath the Verrazano Bridge around 6 p.m. this evening, about an hour from now. And then about an hour later at 7 o'clock it will be tying up. This is a huge hospital ship that will be offering any aid, any logistical help, anything that it can do and provide to this area if it is needed. The unique thing about this is the fact that this is usually a ship you see in far distant shores. Now it is a military ship tying up here, and not because it's coming back to its home berth. As far as the speech that was given on site there, impromptu by the President of the United States, through the benefit of radio here and other audio, some of the rescuers were able to hear that. I had to tell you, when we talked to the rescuers this morning, early this morning, and it was dark, and it was gloomy, and it was rainy, and it was cold, the morale had really been sapped out of a lot of them. And then yet when those words were heard, as you heard the reaction out there at the site, a jolt of electricity went through them. And they have been renewed in two ways, inspired by the words of the President, inspired by the fact that the sun has come out, and now motivated probably twice as hard as they felt this morning to go back to the job that they wanted to do, to find someone alive and bring them out and return them to their families. Aaron?
Thank you. Rather than us sitting around talking about what the President had to say, I wonder if we can just go back and re-rack the tape. And for people, a lot of people, I suspect in the East, are just getting home from work anyway. The President, just to update you, is in Lower Manhattan now. He has been touring, if that's the right word, observing, looking at the site. And there was a moment not very long ago where the President grabbed a bullhorn in one hand and began to talk to the rescue workers who are down on the ground. It is a little hard to hear in parts, but it is absolutely worth taking a look at and listen to. If you guys have the tape, we can do it.
As we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens, I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of it soon. And compassion to everybody who's here. Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
That was the President just a bit ago. Our senior analyst, Jeff Greenfield, is here. Judy, jump in whenever you wish to. There's no question here, Jeff. Just look at it. What did you see? And
I saw an interesting twist. We thought the President was coming up to boost the morale of the people working.
Work the other
I
way.
think the people were boosting the President's morale. I think he got a tremendous amount of strength and energy from the fact that these guys doing possibly as bad a job, or as worse a job, rather, as horrible a job as any American could ever have been asked to do. We're cheering him on. We're saying, we're with you. It's one of those moments where the kind of political give and take that we're so used to and 4 days ago was dominating the headlines, totally swept away by the magnitude of this. And we're going to be seeing a lot of this all over the country.
It was... Go ahead, Judy.
I was just going to say, I think we're seeing just an extraordinary rallying on the part of the American people that we're, you know, we really can't even begin to know the dimensions of. I keep thinking back to what Billy Graham said at the prayer service here in Washington today. He said they were trying to divide the country, and instead they've done just the opposite. I think he called it a backlash. He said they've united us instead, and he talked about the choice that we have to let this destruction implode on us and disintegrate, but instead our choice is to make us stronger, and that's exactly what it's done, and I think you saw that today with the president.
It's not one of those things you can put a number on, but here are these numbers. Walmart says it sold over 300,000 American flags just Tuesday and Wednesday. Add another 200,000 American flags that Kmart sold. A couple of huge retailers, a lot of small retailers, I suppose, were selling flags too. It is just one of those signs of how people have taken this all.
You know what I'm even encouraged by, and this may sound weird, I'm encouraged by the fact that they haven't completely put politics aside. The Democrats wanted the resolution of support rewritten, not to give the president a blank check. And I almost think it's like when a loved one is very sick and then they start snapping a little, you say, okay, I know they're okay because they're feeling good enough to even have those arguments. Politics is so in our blood that even at this moment, you have people saying, all right, but we still have to remember, we're the Congress, you're the president, we have to give you our support. And I, in fact, take that as a point of strength, not a point of weakness.
That politics, when it's, you know, without getting off completely on another tangent here, the problem with politics recently, as I watch, has been so nasty. But politics is not a bad word, and the process is important, and they ought to do the work of debating the side that just needs to be done civilly and appropriately.
Absolutely. You remember the Gulf War, where we talk about how united Americans was. They had a debate in both houses of Congress. They had a vote to make sure the president was going to get the support. We're not going to have anything like that because this is so much more serious. But the events of today, when we see these pictures and hear those words, it takes us so far beyond the political terrain that things have been played in, that it really has swept it off the board. And yet there's enough left of our institutional strength to say we're going to do this the way the Constitution told us to do it. I think that's a strong point.
We're expecting to see shortly some more pictures. And maybe my imagination, Kelly Wallace is up on the roof, she can tell me if I'm wrong. Looks like it got brighter a little bit outside. It's been so dreary here today, so nasty, cold, and wet. And just about the time the president arrived, we saw the sun peek through from the west. Well, there's no question, Kelly, it looks a whole lot brighter than it was.
It is a whole lot brighter. As you noted, it was a short time after the president arrived in New York. You could see the sun coming through the clouds. The first time we saw that on this very dark and dreary day, and obviously somewhat of a symbolic moment, lifting the spirits for the firefighters and the rescue workers who have been working out in the rain all day, and obviously that making their jobs a lot more difficult. You know, I wanted to just add, it's interesting points that you and Jeff are making too, and of course something that has happened here with the president. The president was somewhat criticized, as we know, earlier in the week on Tuesday when he left Florida, and then the decision was for the president to go to Louisiana and then to another military base in Nebraska before returning to Washington late Tuesday night. Some criticism that the president should have been more visible. And then the White House saying the reason for that travel plan was that there was a real and credible threat to Air Force One. Certainly, the White House, though, obviously the president getting out more, I'm not saying in response to that criticism, but certainly as the events have unfolded and as the administration was able to sort of see what was going on and get all its systems in place, definitely putting the president out. We saw him, of course, going to the Pentagon. We saw him go to a hospital yesterday, and of course coming here to New York. Obviously very important for the president because he has a role that really no one else can fill right now, and that is the role of the commander-in-chief, and of course making very important decisions about next steps, but also the person to comfort the nation and to try and come out here and lift spirits. And as you and Jeff noted, though, and we've talked about, he did that here, it appears, with those firefighters, but certainly the president getting a boost, and it will be something he'll probably look back to as he works with his team on the very difficult decisions in the days, weeks, and months ahead.
Just, Kelly, hang on a sec. Just hold on that shot a minute. Late on a Friday afternoon, the 14th of September, the sun finally comes out. And in all that has happened this week, That one gives you goosebumps right there. The shot of the Statue of Liberty, which is, you could see so clearly from what was the World Trade Center. You can see from certainly where we are in New York, where Kelly can turn around and absolutely see it out there, and how pretty and different in a way it looks today. What a nice shot, guys. Thank you very much. We expect in just a moment or two, and if it seems like we're vamping a little bit, we are, the pool pictures of the president from the ground level when he grabbed that bullhorn, that American flag. These pictures will be, we would assume, certainly much more clear, less grainy than the ones we showed you a little bit ago. And I think you'll get a better sense of the reaction of people, the reaction of the president, the expression on the president's face will all tell us something about not only how this is affecting the rescue workers, but the president.
It can't go any louder. I want you all to know that America today is on bended knee in prayer for the people whose lives were lost here, for the workers who work here, for the families who mourn. This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. The nation sends its love
Harry, by pushing
and
me.
compassion
No, sorry.
to everybody who is here.
Cross the line on that one.
Thank you for your hard work. Thank you for making the nation proud. And may God bless America.
All right, let's get back a little bit, folks. Give him some room.
Flag here. And there's your shot.
I was just thinking, Aaron, that 30-something years ago in this neighborhood, the line between those who supported the Vietnam War, construction workers, the so-called hard hats, and those who opposed it, and how sometimes that literally spilled into violence in the streets of New York. And if you can find that line today, I'd be amazed. There is no such line. There is no such division of any kind like that. In this case, this is not choosing up any sides. What has happened in New York on Tuesday, I think, has, at least for now, obliterated that line completely.
Statue of Liberty in your shot. Judy?
Well, Aaron and Jeff, quite a day for President Bush. From my perspective, that is the most comfortable I think I've seen him looking under extraordinary circumstances as he stood there with his arm around that firefighter with the bullhorn in his hand. Comfortable in his role as president since this terrible event on Tuesday morning. The emotions have run the gamut for this president today, from just now visiting, touring the area around the World Trade Center, remains, wreckage in New York City. Earlier today, the president was in Washington at a prayer service he called for at the National Cathedral here in Washington, and here are some of the sights and the sounds from that service.
Those of us who are gathered here Muslim, Jew, Christian, Sikh, Buddhist, Hindu, all people of faith want to say to this nation and to the world that love is stronger than hate, and that love lived out in justice will in the end prevail.
Today we gather to be reassured that God hears the lamenting and bitter weeping of Mother America, because so many of her children are no more.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain.
With broken and humble hearts, and with tears in our eyes, we turn to you, our Lord, to give us comfort. Help us in our distress. Keep us together as people of diverse faiths, colors, and races. Keep our country strong for the sake of the good and righteousness.
My prayer today is that we will feel the loving arms of God wrapped around us, and will know in our hearts that He will never forsake us as we trust in Him.
On this National Day of Prayer and Remembrance, we ask Almighty God to watch over our nation and grant us patience and resolve in all that is to come. As we've been assured, neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth can separate us from God's love. May He bless the souls of the departed. May He comfort our own. And may He always guide our country. God bless America.
The President of the United States at Ground Zero, the Commander-in-Chief today, a witness both to what an unseen opponent is capable of doing to a nation and to the strength that rises from the ashes. Slowly, securely, the pace picking up at the nation's major airports, and as the country shifts to a higher gear, a pause to honor the innocent, the victims of Tuesday's terror attacks. Good evening from CNN Center in Atlanta. I'm Joey Chad.
Good evening, and I'm Wolf Blitzer reporting from Washington, where we've witnessed a day of remembrance, a day of prayer, and a day of the nation taking steps to prepare for war.
The request of President Bush, much of the nation has taken time today to pause, to reflect on the crisis at hand and the events that have brought us to this point. About 90 minutes ago, Mr. Bush touched down in New York to witness firsthand the destruction in Lower Manhattan. Mr. Bush is on his tour right now, as you see there, and a short time ago he rallied, as you saw, some of the rescue workers. We'll have more on this in just a moment. As you probably know by now, it has been a gray and quite grisly day in New York City, about 54 degrees at the top of the hour. The weather has hampered the rescue efforts where the World Trade Center towers have fallen. These efforts, though, continue. Despite all that, Mayor Giuliani citing what he called a strong sense that people are still alive. Quickly, we look now to New York City. President Bush is in the motorcade now, moving away from the scene of the World Trade Center towers. You see his motorcade moving out of the scene now. Kelly Wallace is standing by on a rooftop location with a view to what is going on in the city. Kelly.
Absolutely, Joey. We do not know exactly where the president is going, though, right at this moment. We do know he was going to go to one more location after meeting with and talking with the firefighters and rescue workers around what has become known as Ground Zero and the site, of course, of the terrorist attacks on Tuesday. We're not exactly sure what this location will be, but we did expect that the president would likely try and spend some time with some family members of the victims, people still holding out hope that maybe, just maybe, the firefighters and those rescue teams will find some more survivors in that debris field. So as soon as we see where the president will go, we will let you know. Joey, we've watched these events unfold throughout the afternoon, and one thing we have all reminded of is the extremely tight security that is going on right now. We know that this administration is operating on a highest state of alert, and the U.S. Secret Service operating at that alert and taking absolutely every possible precaution to make sure the president is safe and sound. We did see fighter jets in the air and lots of additional measures that we don't often see when the president travels to, again, ensure the safety of the president. And Joey, as we've noted, the main focus for the president coming here was to try to lift the morale and spirits of these firefighters and these rescue teams, people who have been working around the clock, obviously trying to find possible survivors. Many of these firefighters and rescue teams and police officers,
Kelly?
we can't emphasize. Go ahead, Joey.
Kelly, we just want you to stand by for a moment here. Richard Roth is at the position where this camera is taking the pictures of the president's motorcade passing through Lower Manhattan. Richard, can you hear us?
Yes, I can, Joey. There would have been a lot of talk, I thought, in the days ahead of the presidential visit that it would be more of a smaller size security presence, but it seems like your typical traditional jumbo motorcade for a president when he travels, moving through streets that, of course, have been cleared out. A large amount of the usual accompaniment of security motorcycles. The Secret Service obviously coordinating the president's visit. Reportedly, several units of the Secret Service offices in World Trade Center building number 7 were destroyed or heavily damaged. Secret Service having a lot of its New York headquarters there. That obviously not hampering the president's visit and security preparations. Without really going where we're not supposed to go, moving up west side of Manhattan and passing what seemed to be 100 satellite trucks covering the devastation to the World Trade Towers.
Richard, let me ask you this, Richard. I am not sure where your location is and where the motorcade has just moved through in relationship to the World Trade Center Towers Point, but I can see that there's still quite a bit of debris and ash as the motorcade moved through. Is this very far from the location of the disaster?
No, it's not far. In fact, just before the motorcade headed up that avenue, on the same street, the 3 large garbage trucks filled with debris went ahead of this presidential motorcade. President Bush is, of course, scheduled to return to New York September 24th for the start of the UN General Assembly debate. No word on whether that visit is going to be changed, though they may lower the profile of the debate, Joey.
Let's bring back Kelly Wallace, who I see is standing by listening as well. Can you talk about the impact of Mr. Bush's visit to New York? Really, the intention, I suppose, was to uplift the folks down there on the rescue site, but the president looked quite energized himself by the amount of spirit and determination he found there.
Absolutely, Joey. That's what the president's goal was, to try to give a bit of a morale boost and lift some spirits. Again, we've noted firefighters, police officers, rescue teams, volunteers working 24 hours a day trying to possibly find survivors. Many of these firefighters, police officers have fellow colleagues, their comrades who are among those missing. So the president coming here to try and thank these rescue teams and firefighters for their work and to say that the nation stands united with them. But just as you noted, we watched the pictures unfold. We heard the crowds chanting USA, USA. And as Judy Woodruff noted, which I think was a very interesting point, the president, we saw him grab the bullhorn and talk to the crowd that assembled there. The president looking really the most comfortable that we have seen him since this crisis really began on Tuesday. The president saying, you know, I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked down these buildings will hear all of us soon. So the president seeming to get his own spirits lifted, a sense of strength, boosting his own morale as he probably leaves here, certainly at some point today, and then, of course, has to face big, difficult decisions with his top advisors about what steps the U.S. will take in the days ahead. Joey?
Yeah, Kelly, just to advisory to our viewers, on the left side of your screen there, you're seeing the live picture as the motorcade moves through. Actually, has passed out of the shot there on the left side. On the right side of the screen, you're looking at some videotape taken just a few minutes ago of the president greeting the rescue workers, thanking them for all of their assistance. You see there that many people wanted to step up to the president, and the president had many people to thank for their tremendous efforts in the city of New York. Wolf?
Joey, Marty Savage has been at ground zero in this entire search and rescue operation. He joins us now live. Marty, tell us what's happening right now in the aftermath of the rain that did some additional destructive damage to New York.
Well, let me point out something first, Wolf, to you, and that is the fact that though it was intended by the president's visit not to disrupt the search and rescue effort, which it did not significantly impact, it has impacted greatly the ability to get more supplies and to get more people into the site. The entire area immediately outside of where the president was visiting, that being ground zero, has been in lockdown essentially, and the streets here now, which had been moving with equipment, have been clogged for some time as they wait for the okay to begin moving in. It's important because it is not just the rescue effort that they are working to support, but also trying to deliver that sense of normalcy that the president has been so adamant in trying to get back to. Wall Street hoping to open on Monday. A lot of communication in this area has been knocked out. Restoring communications, restoring electricity, restoring basic services is essential to getting this part of the financial community online. That's why, with the president's words, with the sunlight back out, they're anxious to get back to work. But this morning, you're right, it was very dismal. It was very cold, it was wet, and it was windy. All three of those made for difficult conditions for the firefighters. The wetness made it very slippery, very treacherous out there working on the debris pile. A number of those that were working out there said that everyone was slipping and falling and getting injured. It also had a dampening effect on morale. Then there was the wind. Wind was a great concern, especially for the engineers that had been studying the buildings that had been severely impacted. These are buildings that still stand but are in danger of falling down, and falling down on the very people that are trying to rescue anyone who may be still alive. And one last thing about the rain, it made noise, something they don't want, because what they do out there is use their ears to listen for tapping sounds, any indication of life underground. The rain's gone, the wind's dying down, and now with the words of the president, they're ready to get back on the job. Wolf?
Marty, so the president's appearance, brief as it was in Lower Manhattan there, did serve as a morale boost for all those rescue workers who have been so deeply, deeply moved and obviously so tired by what's going on. Can you tell that it's helped the morale of everyone down there?
Well, there are a lot of people that have been locked out on the perimeter here that were not able to hear the president's words, but a few of them were able to hear it over radios and other means. And they were inspired by what they heard. They liked what the president had to say and the way he said it. And they also agree that something needs to be done about this, not just finding survivors, but finding those who are responsible. Wolf?
All right, Marty, stand by. I want to bring in Brian Nelson. He's also down in Lower Manhattan. He joins us via video phone. Brian, tell us what's going on over there.
Well, Wolf, some of the traffic that has been backed up carrying in supplies into the site behind us is now beginning to move now that the president has moved out of the scene. They've been backed up for, I guess, about an hour and a half during the president's visit. So now they're beginning to move past the police barricades toward the side of the World Trade Center. They're carrying everything from medical equipment to cranes, shovels, and whatever. That site is what we have been trying as journalists to get to as close as we possibly can over the last few days, and it's been kind of a tough job. And so what we did was give a camera to a couple of volunteers working there. One of them was a medical worker, and they took a camera in on our behalf. And I think we're going to show you some video now what that camera picked up. Here's part of it. What we have is a ground eye view of the destruction of number 7 World Trade Center. This site, I don't know, adjectives somehow escape you. It's a compressed pancake. It's awesome, it's stunning, it's shocking to see it that close up. The other thing you notice is what is being called here the Bucket Brigade. Now you have lines of rescue and recovery workers who will make their way up that pile of debris and do it very gingerly. Their own lives are in danger as they do that, because all of that rubble is in a precarious position. They snake their way up to the top and begin filling buckets with pieces of debris, pieces of cement, pieces of anything they can find, and yes, indeed, even human remains. And that bucket is handed down one at a time as it comes down to the bottom, and you may be able to hear some of it being dumped out. And workers will go through that debris very gingerly, looking for pieces of evidence and, yes, human remains, before it is all swept away and is started again. So this is a really painful and painstaking process. And as you can see, it's going to take an awful long time for all of this debris to be cleared away. And you can hear in the background maybe the sounds of saws as they're cutting some of the metal girders as well. Now, the rain today, Marty mentioned that just a moment ago, it made things, I think, somewhat difficult, although that video was taken during the rain. And so it made things difficult, it made it messy, but the workers there are determined to keep going. And so that is what they have done the entire day, even during the president's visit. Wolf?
Brian, tell us precisely where you are so our viewers who are familiar with Manhattan can get a better sense how close you are to the destruction.
Well, I'm at the corner of Greenwich and I think it is Harrison Street. And we are about 10 blocks from the destruction, and you can see it behind my shoulder when the smoke clears. Now, that smoke is resurged all day long, even after the rain. But that's where it is. We can see it right behind us. And you've got a rooftop shot, and you've got this shot from the ground. It's absolutely stunning when you see it from the street level. That to me, is the most shocking. To see how high that rubble is, and to think of how long it's going to take to clear that away, and to think of all the people who have come here. I just talked to a gentleman here who is from a local community college in New Rochelle, and he said he got together with some of his colleagues, and they put the pressure and the finger on some of the suppliers to the college, and they put together 2 trucks of supplies. Their shovels, their ropes, their gloves, their anything they can find. And they came down here to deliver it. There is such unity and determination here as Americans to get this mess cleared away and to get life as it was back to normal down here in South Manhattan.
You're right near Ground Zero over there, and I'm sure, Brian, you've been speaking to a lot of people. Tell us about what they're saying, their mood on this day.
Well, you know, interesting. The day began with an encounter with a policeman. That policeman came up to us, you know, and I guess you would describe it in a somewhat belligerent way. And he said, you know, that SOB is watching you. Now, he's referring to them, of course, but he tended to personify the people behind this as a single person. And he said, he's watching you. And I said, yes, I know, he's watching all of us. And his word to me was, you just tell him, we'll get him. And he was, I mean, this is utter anger coming out of this man. And then I talked to a fire chief named Ronald Crome. He's from Westchester County. And this fire chief was working on his own time today. He came down here at 7 o'clock this morning. I met him at about 3 this afternoon when he was leaving. He was going back to work. He was going to go and do his regular shift as a fire chief, a deputy fire chief in Connecticut. Now, in Westchester County, which is Connecticut, I'm sorry. What he said to me was that the hardest thing was pulling out some of his colleagues, and by that he meant other firemen. Now, these colleagues are New York firemen, but they are the most closely bonded group. Firemen in this entire area are closely bonded, and they all consider themselves brothers. And at this point, he began to well up in tears, and he couldn't talk. It was an absolutely moving moment.
Brian Nelson in Lower Manhattan, thank you very much. Just one note, you did point out Westchester County is in New York, not in Connecticut. We all know that. I know that because I have relatives who live in Westchester County. In any case, Joey, let's go back to you.
Wolf, now we want to get more information on the search for whoever is responsible behind these horrible horrible things that we have seen. Joining us now, Mike Betcher, who's been following up on the investigation. Mike, investigators looking into this know more now about those they think are responsible.
And they shared some of it with us today, Joey. They released 2 lists today. One of the living, that included 100 people, but it was kept private. And this list of the dead, the hijacked suspects, all 19 of them aboard the 4 aircraft, 3 of them that went into buildings, the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and the 3rd that crashed into a field near Pittsburgh. You'll notice that many of these people are from Florida. There were 7 pilots in there. 3 of them are from the New York, New Jersey area. They list that as their address. 17 lived in the United States. The other 2 came from overseas. And we have been developing more information on each one of these people. But what we would like to do is take a look at Mohammed Atta, who was on board one of those aircrafts, the American Airlines aircraft, that goes from, I'm trying to get the flight number right now. Mohammed Atta was on American Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles. And we have put together a roadmap of his travels, and it shows the international nature of the travels of Mohammed Atta. He started out in Hamburg, Germany, where he traveled and lived in the 1990s. And then from there, in May of 2000, he ended up in Venice, Florida, and he took a flight training class there. In December of 2000, he was at Coral Springs. That's where we pick him up there. He rented an apartment while he was living in that part of Florida. Then in December of 2000, Opelika, he was at the Sim Center in Opelika, Florida. Now the Sim Center instructor says that Mohammed Atta and 2 other people came there and they wanted to take simulator time in a 727. And he said the odd thing was they weren't interested in takeoffs and landings. They were more interested in how to make turns in a jetliner. Then in February of 2001, we pick him up again in Hamburg, Germany. German police the last 2 days have been going to apartments that have been lived in by Mohammed Atta. According to German authorities, they've been looking at clues there. So he returned there for some reason. And then in August 2001, he came back to Pompano Beach, Florida, where he rented a car at an agency called Warwick. And Warwick Rental Car said they rented him 2 cars over the period of about 30 days. And in the last 2 weeks, the second car that he rented, in about 2 weeks, he put 3,000 miles on that car, which would take him up and down the eastern seaboard if he would have wanted to. So that was an extraordinary amount of mileage. Then last week, we pick up the trail of Mohammed Atta in Palm Beach County. And there he went to a flight center and asked to take 3 refresher flights. He said he wanted to practice that he was a pilot. He had the license. So he was there, and that's right before he left for Boston, Massachusetts, where at the Alamo Rental Car Agency, he rented a car and then drove up to Portland, Oregon on the morning of the attack in Portland, Oregon. He left the car there, Portland, Maine. He left the car there, caught a commuter flight to Boston, and then boarded that American Airlines jet that crashed into the World Trade Center.
Mike, we want to follow up on all of this. Now we want to turn to CNN's Bill Delaney following up on the story from Boston and Logan Airport. Bill, as Mike noted, there has been a path already traced over all these different cities across the world as well. And at Logan and in the Boston area, there is evidence and indication that those involved may have been doing more, making some more inquiries in that area.
Well, many fragments, many strands. Investigators here in the New England region following thousands, really tens of thousands of leads as they try to understand how 10 hijackers hijacked those 2 767s last Tuesday. Now, one intriguing fragment. I'm standing at Eastern Air Charter in Norwood, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, where law enforcement officials and other sources tell us several days before the hijacking, men identified as Middle Eastern types were here at Eastern Air Charter making inquiries. They wanted to know about chartering a twin-engine jet. They wanted to know about that jet's fuel capacity. They wanted to know how soon they could charter such a jet. Could they do it quickly? And they wanted to know how long it would take to fly to New York. Now, one high law enforcement official I spoke to said to me, Joey, he believed that there was a high possibility, he said, that these were either the hijackers themselves or another team. Now, of course, the FBI hasn't ruled out the possibility that other teams are still at large. Eastern Air Charter officials themselves downplaying all this, but another source told us law enforcement authorities have been here, he said, tearing the place apart. A couple of other strands of many here. The Portland Press-Herald reporting today that in Portland, Maine, one of the hijackers, it is reported, had lived for at least a year and may have had a relationship, in fact, with a local woman. Amid other reports from many sources today, FBI sources, that the planning for all this, of course, took many, many years. Back to you, Jody.
CNN's Bill Delaney following up with more parts of the investigation up in Boston. Thanks very much, Bill. I want to move back to the human side of the story because there has been so much emotion on the streets of New York City. You saw it beginning really yesterday. We saw the great flush of emotion as all those people who are looking for all those missing loved ones from the World Trade Center area still wandering the streets of New York trying to find some way, some evidence of where their missing loved one has gone. CNN's Elizabeth Cohen has been following the scene out there at the New York Armory, and she rejoins us now. Elizabeth.
Hello, that's right. I'm here at the New York Armory. We do not know if President Bush is coming, but if he wanted to talk to the families of people who are missing their loved ones, this is where he would come. This is where the families come to register information about their loved ones. Governor Pataki was here yesterday, was hugging people. He had tears in their eyes. He talked to them at length. His wife was here this morning inside the Armory and spoke to people and told them if you need financial help, you can apply for it here to help meet your mortgage this month or to help do whatever it is that you need to do. When people come into the Armory, there is help for them. There are counselors. They register information about their loved one. They're then shown two lists. They're shown a list of people who've been found in the hospital, and then they're shown a list of people who the authorities know are deceased. This woman right here Audrey has just been at the Armory. She's looking for her nephew, Damian Moat. Can you tell me about your nephew? The last person who saw him was his girlfriend, right?
Last person that saw him was his girlfriend, Samantha. They came down on the subway together, and he left for work. You got to be at work by 7 o'clock that morning, and she went to school.
And tell me, you're distributing these posters. What do you hope will happen with these posters?
Well, I'm hoping somebody will see him somewhere where he can identify himself, and would call any of these numbers here. So, because I know he's out there somewhere.
It's been almost 3 days now, and I know people were full of hope the first day, full of hope the second. Are you full of as much?
I'm just as much as full of hope as as day number one. He's out there.
What keeps you going? Is it your faith?
My faith, hoping, and my family and friends.
And his parents must just be distraught.
They are very. They're here today with me, but they don't want to come in camera.
I can understand that, of course. Tell me about Damien. We can see he's a very good-looking guy.
He's a very good boy. He's a very good person. He's not the kind of person that is into company. He's more into work. He's a home person.
When you went inside the Armory, were they able to tell you anything?
They weren't able to tell me anything, but we gave them all the information that we had that they wanted us to give to them. So we did that, and they sent us downstairs to check a list. He wasn't on that list. So they gave us a website number for us to keep checking, and they said they'll call us as soon as they get any information.
Was it well organized? Were they supportive?
They were very supportive. They even have counselors that came over trying to talk to us, but what we needed really was for some information how to get help for the kids that we have at home that are taking this very, very hard.
There are children in your family?
Yes.
And how are they responding to?
Not well, especially his younger brothers. He got two younger brothers, 18 and 10. They're not doing too well, so we need some kind of counseling for them.
I can imagine. Tell me what you'll be doing once you leave here. Where else will you go?
Well, we were on our way down to St. Vincent, and then we're going to go to that support group at the Pier Hotel because he worked with Cantor Fitzgerald, and they have like a support group up there, so we were going up there.
So that's a support group for people who work for Cantor Fitzgerald with the financial group. I've seen so many of these posters say Cantor Fitzgerald on them, one after another. It must be devastating, so many people from one company.
Yes, so many people from one company, and most of them are up there at the Pier Hotel. It's like a support group, and you know we feel better when we are among people who are going through the same thing that we are going through.
And has the company been helpful in?
Well, they've been helpful with the information that they've been giving us, you know, because so far they gave us numbers and stuff and places where to go, and you know, counselors to talk to us, you know, and stuff like that. So they're really doing much, you know, to help us. They're doing their best.
And tell me, is Damien a fighter?
He's not really a fighter. He's a kind of laid-back person, you know. But I know he's down there trying to get to us.
New Yorkers sometimes, people who are from out of town think New Yorkers are heartless and don't work together.
Not Damien, you know.
But the people when you've been going on the streets, putting up your posters, have people been supportive?
Very, very supportive. You know, it's wonderful to see how New Yorkers, they get together, especially in crisis. You know, we all stick together.
Well, thank you, ma'am, and the best of luck finding Damien. We have another woman who wanted to come talk with us.
Miss?
Ma'am, tell me your name and who you're looking for.
My name is Ellie Nagler, and I'm here because my friend Alex Baelish, who's a Red Cross worker, he's working like 24 hours a day. This is his best friend, Ian Thompson, and Alex is working so hard he can't do this right now. So I had the day off, and I decided I would come and just put posters up and come and talk to people and see, you know, whether anybody might have seen him. So we're all very worried about him. He was a great guy. He's the kind of guy who would have been helping other people down. And he was on the 84th floor, and nobody's heard from him. He's got a wife and a baby. So, you know, we're just all concerned. And it's a great place to be, really, you know, because everybody's really very supportive.
And tell me, what kinds of things are you as a group doing to look for him?
Well, I know they're going to register, you know, him. They haven't done it yet because his wife has to take care of the baby, and, you know, she's really the one that knows him the well, and Alex is, you know, working really hard. So they're doing that, and they're just trying to contact a lot of the people that he worked with and seeing whether anybody might, you know, remember where he was. And, you know, so far we don't really have a lot to go on.
Has anyone been able to tell you anything?
They don't have any information at this point. It's a dead end.
I was talking to the woman before you that sometimes out-of-towners think New Yorkers are heartless, don't help each other out. How have people hung together today?
Oh, people are great. I mean, you know, I was really a little frightened coming down here. I didn't know what to expect, and I was a little scared. And, you know, everybody's so supportive, and we put up a bunch of posters. And, you know, I love reading about other people's families. It's very sad, but it makes you feel good that you live in New York. And you know, I've been here my whole life. This is amazing experience. Very sad. Very, very sad.
And tell me, what did he do at Eurobrokers?
He's a broker. You know, I don't know. I really don't know him, you know, and this is just a plea from my friend. Can you help me? We want to get the information out about this guy. I know you're not working, but I'm working. So can you spend the day putting posters up? And so I did it.
This was a building that obviously was in trouble in 1993. The people who you know who worked there, were they nervous about it? Did they think about it?
I have a few friends who actually worked in the building, and my a roommate, and she worked on the 84th floor. As a matter of fact, it's the same floor this guy worked on, and she used to be very scared of working there. Eventually, she got another job, so you know, I'm pretty sure she's really happy about that. People, you know, you get used to stuff, but it's just too high a building. I mean, it was just too high, you know, and I don't know, it's scary.
You know, something that sort of hit me after talking to all the families is that I haven't heard anybody be angry at the people who did this. Everyone is just sad and at the same time hopeful that their friend is alive. Have you heard anyone be angry?
I think the anger is really going to come. I find myself, consider myself a really liberal person, and I'm getting really angry. So, you know, there's a lot of anger out there. It's just that right now we're trying to deal with finding anybody that's possible to find, hoping against hope that, you know, there might be some people still that were trapped, you know, who might come out alive. And after that, then, hey, deal with the people that did this very severely.
It's Friday now. The explosion was Tuesday morning. It's now Friday evening. Has hope diminished?
You know, I don't want to say that. You know, I think that, you know, I haven't been down there. I mean, you could spend your days crying about the people that are trapped in there, or you could just keep on looking. I know these guys are working really hard to find anybody, and, you know, hopefully they'll find some people. I mean, you can't give up. You just can't give up at this point. It's too early.
And tell me, where are people putting the posters, and how many of you are working on finding him?
Well, I came with my aunt. My aunt did all the copying for me of the posters, and we started 57th Street, and we just keep on putting them up, you know, all the way down here, and you know, we put up about 30 posters already.
Thank you. Thank you. Good luck.
Much.
Wolf, back to you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And even as this painful and treacherous search and rescue operation continues here in Washington, Secretary of State Colin Powell had some pointed comments today on the nature of the war ahead and how it will differ from any other war this country has ever fought.
This is different. The enemy is in many places. The enemy is not looking to be found. The enemy is hidden. The enemy is very often right here within our own country. And so you have to design a campaign plan that goes after that kind of enemy. And it isn't always blunt force military, although that is certainly an option. It may well be that the diplomatic efforts, political efforts, legal, financial, other efforts may be just as effective against that kind of an enemy as would military force be. And the point the President made this morning is that the whole cabinet's involved, and we're going to use all the tools and weapons at our disposal to fight this campaign and to win this war.
Our national security correspondent David Ensor has been checking with his sources in the intelligence community and elsewhere to find out precisely what's going on. What have you learned today, David?
Well, Wolf, first of all, U.S. officials are saying to me, excuse me, that there's evidence there may still be terrorists inside the United States who are hoping to attack targets. So there's a real sense of concern, and that is why so many security measures are being taken. There is still evidence. As one official put it, there's reason to believe not all the perpetrators are dead or in jail. Officials say they can't rule out that there may be additional pilots with ties to terrorist organizations inside the U.S., and there may be other types of threats as well. So that perhaps is the headline. Now, concerning diplomacy and the efforts that Secretary Powell just talked about, tremendous number of calls out to allies and to other nations, particularly in the region, obviously. And the message is, particularly with nations that may in some cases have hedged their bets in the past, it's time to choose sides. And in one specific area, the United States officials say is asking for cooperation that can be checked. It's asking nations like Pakistan and moderate Arab states to stop the flow of any money to charities and other organizations that are thought to be fronts for the bin Laden organization. And it is saying that in the past, a lot of these nations have turned a blind eye to wealthy Muslim people, individuals, sending some money, and it's been kind of considered a hedge. The U.S. wants these countries to enforce this now, and it says it will be looking to see whether they do or not. And it has sources and methods with which to do that, Wolf.
And David, this organization that Osama bin Laden heads, this Al-Qaeda organization, how big of a group is this? How many people does the U.S. intelligence community believe is involved?
They really don't have an estimate on the numbers, size. It's a hydra-headed organization. It's not even really an organization. It's sort of a loosely knit group of like-minded people. There are affiliations with things like Islamic Jihad in Egypt. where bin Laden's doctor is in fact the head of it. There are a lot of different kinds of groups, and the kinds of individuals that were apparently involved in these terrorist attacks in the United States, they operated very much separately. They didn't need to communicate. They didn't need to be in touch with anyone else. Their mission was started a long time ago. So it operates in a very compartmentalized way, making it difficult for U.S. intelligence to track it. Nonetheless, they are tracking some of the communications, and they do still have, and are continuing to find more evidence, they tell me, that the people who were involved in these attacks can be linked to the bin Laden organization. Now, there may be other organizations involved, other ties as well, but that is one thing they are still saying, started saying Tuesday, and they're still saying, Wolf.
And finally, David, we've all heard that Osama bin Laden is a wealthy Saudi fugitive. How much money does he have and his organization have? Is there any estimate how much money they have at various banks and how this money can be tracked, if at all?
Well, as you see on the screen, and as I was saying earlier, wealthy Muslims in a number of countries are known to send charitable, what they think is charitable contributions, or maybe they don't think that, but contributions to charities and front organizations that then make their way into Pakistan, which is Peshawar particularly, which is kind of the organizational headquarters for bin Laden's group and affiliated groups. A lot of money goes in there. He, however, has his own personal fortune. He comes from a construction millionaire's family in Saudi Arabia. He was estimated at one point to have had a fortune himself of $300 million. There may not be much of that left. He doesn't. It's not that the terrorists, for example, these that have just done this, needed money. What the U.S. is interested, though, is in testing these countries to see whether they will cut off the funds. It's a test of them. Whose side are they on? That is the question the U.S. is asking countries today. Wolf?
David Ensor, thank you very much for your excellent reporting. Samuel Berger was the National Security Advisor during President Clinton's administration. He joins us now from our Washington bureau. Mr. Berger, thanks for joining us. So let me get to some of the points that David just reported about. First of all, the notion that there may still be other terrorists associated with this plot on the loose here in the United States. Is there a sense that Americans should not let their guard down?
Well, clearly security has to be a primary concern, not just in the short term, but in the long term. At airports, at our borders, and more generally. This organization was able to operate in the United States in a way that was beyond, I think, the expectation of the law enforcement and intelligence community. And therefore, we have to look at security not just in the immediate context, but generally over the long term. We're obviously going to have to perhaps recalibrate the balance between convenience and security.
I'm sure you must have been thinking over these past few days about what, if anything, your administration could have done, the Clinton administration could have done, as far as Osama bin Laden, assuming his organization was responsible for this, that perhaps you didn't do for whatever reason, rethinking, Monday morning quarterbacking some of your decisions. Anything come to mind?
Well, bin Laden was one of the highest priorities, certainly since the '98 bombing of the embassies in Africa. We had information that there was going to be a gathering of many of his operatives. We struck that gathering. We had some success, but not complete. There has been a very vigorous effort on the part of the intelligence community to take down cells in a number of countries. We broke up a multi-dimensional threat around the millennium, and we have looked for every opportunity during this period to strike at bin Laden. Unfortunately, it's a very difficult target, as others have pointed out. You not only have to know where he is at a given moment, you have to know where he will be at a future moment. This is not a group that is easy to penetrate. You just don't show up from out of town and say you're a cousin who dropped by. But I think the intelligence community over the last year has had a full court press on bin Laden, and we simply now that he has escalated this beyond any imaginable level in the past, have to escalate our efforts by the same token.
Samuel Berger, the National Security Advisor during the Clinton administration, thanks for joining us.
Okay, Wolf.
Thank you. And Joey, back to you.
Wolf, as you have talked to Sandy Berger, you've talked about some of the complexities about reaching Osama bin Laden, if he is in fact the figure behind all of this. There are those across the world, of course, who have come forward to demonstrate their support for the United States in its time of crisis. Many nations of the world have come forward with their votes of support. But bear in mind, too, that there are people, individuals in this world who have celebrated the attacks against the United States. Help us understand why, what motivates the anger, in some cases the hatred of the United States. Here's CNN's chief international correspondent, Christiane Amanpour.
These pictures of Palestinians celebrating the terrorist attack on the United States horrified all those who were in mourning. Palestinian leaders were quick to point out that these were only isolated incidents by what they called an ignorant few, and Chairman Yasser Arafat immediately condemned the attacks.